But let's talk about how you fix these particular institutions and what is the exact problem with the institutions.
Sure.
So there have been a couple of solutions proposed with regard to the media from the right. One is the sort of restoration of the idea that there is an objective journalism to be found and that everybody should go back to this aspirational idea that supposedly existed before, where there were the fact checkers and the people who reported the facts, and then there were the opinion makers, and there were two separate groups of people. And then there are folks like me who tend toward a sort of legal realist perspective when it comes to the media, which is all these folks have their political point of view. We know they'll have their political point of view.
Sure.
Why don't they just be honest about their political point of view? I run a right-wing website. The Huffington Post is a left-wing website. I have less of a problem with CNN, with MSNBC than I do with CNN for exactly this reason, because MSNBC is clear about its biases. How do you think this gets solved? Is it people being upfront about their own biases or attempting to remove their own biases in doing the reporting? Is that even possible?
I think both of those techniques can work just fine. So, Gonzo was the idea that if we just open what it is that we're thinking and doing, we insert ourselves into the story, that allows the consumer to unspin whatever it is that they're doing, or you can have warring, a left-wing media and a right-wing media. That's not what the problem is at the moment. I think that the problem is that a lot of this stuff is just actually disingenuous. Right? People know that you are not a Nazi, and they know that Richard Spencer is very close to being one, that he's really flirting with stuff that's absolutely dangerous and crazy. And they don't care. The key point is, as somebody said to me recently, progress is messy. And the idea is that if certain lives have to get ruined on the way towards some imagined egalitarian society, then that's just too damn bad. That's terrifying.
Well, literally the language of Stalinism. I mean, that is breaking the eggs to make the omelet. That is legitimately the quotes being used by people who are Stalinists.
Yes, and sometimes certain bad things have to happen, but we're talking about the actual destruction of interesting and important lives. Because the people who see this collectively view this as a hive. If a few bees in a hive die, it's not like the hive actually collapses. So because of the collectivist framework, they actually don't see damages to individual lives as particularly worthy of empathy. So what is going on, I think, is very important. You bring up two models. You can either try for objectivity or you can be honest about your biases. Both of those are much more similar to each other than this other thing is, which is we know what the right answer is for society, and it doesn't really matter how we get there. So what we're going to do is we're going to propose ideas that are, in an analogy, they're almost like suicide ideas. They're ideas that are simply meant to be highly destructive. So that if I say to you, well, clearly a white man can't understand anything, then what I've just done is I've taken two of your attributes and I've shut you up or forced you to deal with this completely irrelevant argument, for the next 90 minutes. So this style of argumentation is something that actually has to be excluded. If you want a diversity of opinions that actually matter, it's very important not to seat people who think in these terms at the table. And this is what we talked about I think maybe on the Rubin Report, or maybe it was just before you got there. There's good diversity and there's bad diversity. And so what I analogized is good diversity is when you have people who are of good character trying to puzzle through something, fighting very hard for their perspective. Bad diversity is where you have two people who grow up in countries that drive on opposite sides of the road, and you decide that everybody's entitled to drive on the side of the road that they grew up of and feel comfortable with, and all you get is auto accidents. And so it's very important to drive bad diversity out of the system, because otherwise you never get to experience the benefits of the highly multicultural and interesting, diverse society that we've managed to build for ourselves.